Hi, it's Angelo Caruso. I thought we'd talk for a few minutes today about the amazing power of influence and how it works. If you're in sales, certainly you're using influence all the time, but if you're in leadership, influence is important to you. I think if you're a human being on planet Earth, influence is a very key skill set to develop and cultivate. And I think we should be practicing it all the time. Surprisingly, very few people actually go to work on mastering the art of influence. It's kind of a happenstance for most people. We'll talk about that in just a second. First, I want to tell you a quick story about how influence can work for you, certainly how it's worked for me. A few years back, I was flying out of Detroit Metro to go speak at a gig, do some training or something. And at the time, I was parking in an offsite lot, which meant that I had to ride a shuttle bus from the lot to the terminal. You've done this before, no doubt, in various cities, and the shuttle bus is, what, a 7 or 8 minute ride. There are a few moments where people are getting on the shuttle bus and settling in. Sometimes you have to wait a couple extra minutes for somebody else to come to the shuttle bus. And then there's the ride itself, and then there's a disembarkment period as people get off at the airport. And so there's not often a lot of conversation. The only conversation you typically witness on the shuttle bus is when a couple gets on together and they might chat together on the ride. And yet, influence can happen between total strangers. In fact, that's the most powerful types of influence, right? Is when you interact with somebody you don't normally do and something good happens. So I'm on this particular bus on this particular day, and there's a guy across from me, and I don't remember why I started the conversation, but I'm real sure I started it because I'm almost the guy that starts the conversation. I grew up in a family with a bunch of brothers who played in a pop band. My dad was a musician. He was a people person, right, a performer. And so we all had this stripe of putting on a show for people, right? My dad used to say that if you met somebody and that person didn't remember you after the fact, it was the worst insult ever. So we always worked really hard to earn a good first impression so that you would remember us. It paid off in the music business, and it certainly pays off for me now. So I'm on the bus, and I'm probably chatting this guy up, and I don't know what people think when I do this, like, who is this guy and why is he talking to me? But it began probably with some innocuous questions like, where are you off to today, right? An innocent enough question on a shuttle bus ride on the way to the airport. And then the follow-up question might be, what's taking you there, or what's the purpose of your trip, business or pleasure? It's this like really lighthearted thing. What the other person doesn't know when you're cultivating influence is like they're being pulled down into this funnel. Salespeople call it the sales funnel. I wasn't talking to this guy with any real purpose other than just to enjoy myself, right? But it turns out he was in fact coming into this little funnel, and uh, and I was about to be honored by the law of reciprocity, which is another little mechanism that happens when influence is being cultivated. So I may have been impressing him with my gregariousness, the fact that I'm outgoing, the fact that I was interested in him. But the law of reciprocity says eventually that pendulum's going to swing the other way, right? He's going to become interested in me. He's going to ask me questions about my trip or where I'm going on this sunny day. And sure enough, he does. I find out, by the way, his name is Bill Tile. It doesn't matter what his last name is for our purposes in this call. His name's Bill. And Bill eventually asked me where I'm going, and I tell him, and then he says, what do you do for a living? And I say, well, I do sales training, right? And it turns out Bill is the vice president of sales at the company that he works at. Now, I had no idea about any of this when I started chatting him up, but this is how it works. And it's like you're at the door and you knock on the door, and it turns out that sound is the sound of opportunity knocking, right? It's one thing after another, and he's being pulled down into this funnel. It's heady, right? It's exciting. It doesn't always go like this, but it went like this on this particular day. We exchange business cards. I take the card, I put it in my wallet. When I get back from the trip, I put it in my database because I send him a message that says, it was great connecting with you. Listen, I do sales training. I'll send you a sales tip once in a while that you can share with your team. Would that be okay? Now I have his permission, right? He writes back, it was great meeting you. Certainly, yes, 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 green light. So I drip him, it's called marketing, right? I drip him with my newsletter monthly for the next 3 years. And then like a month ago, I get an email message from Bill it might have been on LinkedIn, but I get a message from him that says, Michael, our team is doing our annual sales meeting next year, and we'd like you to come be the guest speaker if we can work out good terms. From a little chat up conversation I had on a shuttle bus 3 years ago, right? With a total stranger. And that's influence. That's how it works. It doesn't always end happy like that, but a lot of times it does. And it doesn't have to end in a transaction. Sometimes it just ends in goodwill. The point is, we all could get better at this. And so the way I look at influence versus, say, selling is that if I was selling you, I would have to work really hard to convince you to do something, right? That's my job as a salesperson. But if I'm influencing you, I'm hardly working at all for you to convince yourself. You see why this might be better for me. I'm not working as hard. But it's also better for you, because if your message to yourself is, boy, I like this idea, I think I'm going to do it, it's a lot different than you blaming me for forcing you to, listen to a presentation or forcing you to give me a purchase order number, you see? So when I started thinking about influence and how it works, I was starting to connect some dots in my head, because I'm a consultant and I connect dots. And I was reading a while back a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. And I was connecting the dot about what Matthew said about black box thinking and how it works with influence. Matthew says that black box thinking is about problem solving. And one of the key components of black box thinking is that you are part of the problem, right? He says it's a lot harder to solve a problem if you are part of the problem. And that's true in influence if one of your problems in influence is negative self-talk, right? I'll give you an example of this. Another dot I've connected recently. I am rereading Phil McGraw's book called Self Matters. And Phil talks about self-esteem, of course, and the importance of it. But when you think about self-esteem when it comes to influence, is that you can't be powerful when you're influencing somebody if you've got the negative self-talk voice going in your head at the same time. That negative self-talk voice is a lot louder than your voice to the other person. And so you'll listen to that voice first, right? That'll be your default. Phil says, I call him Phil. Phil says that if your negative self-talk concerns self-esteem in any way, like you protecting yourself from danger, or you protecting yourself from insecurity, or self-doubt, then you're dead in the water. You're dead before you start. There's an old saying in negotiation that power is perceived, right? If you think you have it, you have it. And the converse is also true. If you don't think you have power, you'll never be a successful negotiator. The other guy will always have the upper hand in the negotiation. And that's how it works. So here's what we got on the table so far, that influence is better than salesmanship, right? Because it's more subtle and it's got more buy-in from the other person. That black box thinking, or this idea of you being part of the problem, is something that needs to be addressed. And that negotiation or any kind of interaction with other people it's a power exchange. And if you don't think you have any power, you lay down. I was telling some people recently that I just attended the Troy Chamber of Commerce annual Christmas party. It's annual. Apparently it happens once a year. And there were like 300 people there. And I was stunned at how many people didn't care to talk to me at this networking function. Some of you are thinking to yourselves, yeah, I wouldn't talk to you either. But stay with me on this, right? So let's review. You pay dues to belong to the Troy Chamber of Commerce. You take the time out of a busy day during the holiday season to go to an event, and then you talk to fewer people than you ignore, which is essentially what was happening on that day. If you worked at the Chamber of Commerce, you would be obligated to say hello to everybody that walked past you. How are you? Thank you for coming. How are you? Thank you for coming. How are you? Thank you for coming. But because you don't work for the Chamber of Commerce and you have your own agendas and your own negative self-talk, you walk by more people without speaking than you do engaging people and saying, hi, how are you? What brings you here today? Who you work with? All that kind of stuff. And so this negative self-talk really works against us in innocuous settings like networking events, but it certainly works against us in sales. The number one thing, it's in all the selling textbooks, the number one thing that salespeople don't do is ask for the order. right? You invest all kinds of time and money and energy getting in front of the prospect. And you tell them, you do the 56 slide PowerPoint presentation data dump, right? But at the end of the presentation, you never say, I'm really here to earn your business. I want you to give me a try. I will never let you down. And what do you say? We do a deal together, right? They never ask for the order. There's all kinds of data points on this. And if you think that's a serious an egregious mistake by salespeople, consider that people who are interviewing for a job, they've been out of work for months, their family's hungry, right? And they're in a job interview and they won't ask for the job. They won't finish the interview by saying, because they always say, is there anything else you want to share with me, Mr. Prospect, Mr. Job Candidate? And that's a big chance to say, well, I know you're interviewing other candidates. I just want to tell you that I am very serious about doing a good job for you. I can start on Monday. I'm extremely excited. I like your style. I love your company. And I'd like you to give me a shot. And you just look in the other person's eyes, man, and you ask for the job. And again, we have tons of data points that interview people who've already talked themselves out of the fact that they're going to get the job. It's stunning, right? And so influence is important. And that's when I first started thinking about this. I thought, well, I wonder if there's a way that we can package this for people and help them get influence so that they could be stronger leaders or stronger salespeople. And so we're doing a retreat in Tampa, January 25 through 27. This is 2018 now for the event. And it's going to be a fantastic weekend. It'll change your life. It'll change how people think about you. And more importantly, it will change how you think about yourself, because you will cultivate the art of influence for the rest of your life, right? And so you might want to consider palm trees in the wintertime and coming down to Tampa and joining us, January 25 through 27. It's at the fabulous Saddlebrook Resort. I will tell you, we have some exciting promo codes for this. If you are a member of the Wesley Chapel Chamber of Commerce, this is the area where the Saddlebrook Resort is. You can get $500 off by using the promo code CHAMBER. If you are a Rotarian, a fellow Rotarian, membership has its privileges. If you use the promo code ROTARY, you'll get $500 off. And if you're listening to this video, I appreciate it. And you can get $300 off by using the word improve. And so you would go to the Activate page, and I'll tell you how to get there. You're going to search 5 keywords, right? Michael Angelo Caruso, Activate Influence. Look for the site, the page that has the reviews on it, the stars, and you can see what the event is about. You can see if it's good for you. Your second person gets in at half price if you care to bring your business partner. Power couples are welcome. And I hope to see you at Activate Influence in January. Influence is something that everyone can use in all walks of life. You can use it at home. I'll close with a quick story. Some of you know Renee, and she's a great person and a terrific human being, but we don't always agree on everything, right? Sometimes we even disagree on important things, like where we're going to go on vacation. And what I've learned in our relationship is that Renee gets 2 votes sometimes. And so I've realized that because she gets 2 votes on where we go on vacation, I've got to have more influence. And so influence can help you in your personal life as well. My name is Michael Angelo Caruso. More about what I do, my programs, sales coaching, sales training at michaelangelocaruso.com. And of course, you can learn more about the Tampa retreat, which is actually called Activate, Leading and Selling with Influence, by searching Michael Angelo Caruso Activate Influence online. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.